Number 9. Bandera Ford. Back in 2010, a futuristic-looking flying saucer-like Ford was spotted in a Wendy's parking lot in Ohio. Intrigued bystanders set out to learn the story behind it and discovered a Car and Driver article from 1998 profiling the unique vehicle's builder, John Bender. He built the so-called Bandera Ford and another like it over a 3-year period during the 90s. At the time the article was published, Bender was 68 years old. He was a retired mechanic and electrician who had always aspired to design his own car. Bender finally brought his vision to fruition with his 2 unique Bandera Fords. The Car and Driver article describes the vehicle as a 4-passenger mid-engined coupe with gull-wing doors and a Ford Pinto suspension. The car is only 42 inches tall and sits low to the ground. One of the Bandera Fords was white while the other was gold. While it's unclear what happened to the cars, this image of what looks like an abandoned Bandera Ford suggests that at least one of them was deserted and forgotten about at some point in time. Photos of the vehicle that were captured from the Wendy's parking lot in 2010 show that it was visibly aging on both the inside and out. This gives the space-age car an ironically outdated look and serves as a reminder that it wasn't something from the future. Number 8. The American Dream. In 1986, a newly built vehicle called the American Dream shot to fame as the new Guinness World Record holder for the world's longest limousine. At just over 100 feet long, it contains a waterbed, a swimming pool, a jacuzzi, a putting green, a helipad, a refrigerator, a phone, and more. The 25,000-pound vehicle can be driven from both ends and can accommodate up to 75 passengers. Its original builder, custom car designer Jay Orberg, based its design on the 1976 Cadillac Eldorado limousine. He equipped each end with a pair of 8-cylinder engines and installed a hinge in the middle of the extra-long vehicle so it could turn corners. The American Dream experienced a brief period of fame during which it was frequently rented out for appearances in movies and at major events. However, its popularity was short-lived. Not only did the excitement seem to wear off, the limo was difficult to park and was inconvenient in several other ways due to its size. It stopped receiving regular maintenance and started to rust as it sat in storage, neglected and forgotten. The American Dream got a second chance at life thanks to a man named Michael Manning, who owns an automotive teaching museum in Long Island, New York called the Auto Soim. When he first saw the car years after it was last used, he described it as graffiti-covered garbage with flat tires, broken windows, and parts that had deteriorated far beyond repair. Manning nevertheless fell in love with the vehicle and set his sights on restoring it. Unfortunately, he ran into some funding issues after acquiring the car, and it sat for several more years before he decided to sell it on eBay. Florida-based tourist attraction owner Michael Deezer bought it and had it shipped to Orlando. Determined to bring the car back to life, he sought help from Manning, several other experts, and some auto body repair students. 3 years and more than $250,000 later, the limo has finally been restored to its former glory. Number 7. Herkimer Jitney. A triple-axle, 6-wheeled vehicle called the Herkimer Jitney appeared for just a few minutes during the 1999 fictional film Mystery Men. In the scene, it was acquired by a group of superheroes who were on a quest to save a city from apocalyptic destruction. The Jitney had a shockingly realistic look, perhaps because the scene was filmed using a real custom-built vehicle. It was made using a combination of running gear from a 1979 Ford semi-truck with the body removed, and a modified Airstream camper was put in its place. People loved it, but because of its uniqueness to the Mystery Men movie, the Herkimer Jitney couldn't be used in other films. As a result, it was parked at a storage yard in California and left to decay. Fans tried persuading the vehicle's owner to restore it, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. Mark Zorin, who owns Razorfly Studios in North Carolina, specializes in recreating movie and television props. He checked his email while taking a shower one day and saw that the Jitney was up for sale. Zorin was third in line to buy it. So in hopes that he would gain priority in the sale, he explained to the seller that he planned to use his expertise to restore the vehicle to its former glory. It worked, and after agreeing to buy the Jitney without seeing it in person first, it was delivered to Zorin a few days later. He described it as being made with steel that was thin enough to form by hand and said that the roof wasn't designed to bear any weight. Some of the Jitney's accessories were gone and its rear end had been dramatically altered. In other words, Zorin had his work cut out for him, but he remains optimistic about the project, which is ongoing. Late last year, he told the classic car website Hemmings that his team was still working to track down some parts, but that they'll make their own if they don't find what they need. His company specializes in both 3D printing as well as hand building and sculpting, so one way or another, they will make it happen. They hope to finish the restoration for the movie's 25th anniversary in 2024. Number 6. Bus Garage Number 7. In a residential area on the outskirts of Kyiv, there's a UFO-shaped Soviet-era structure that goes by the much less unique name of Bus Garage Number 7. It's filled with colorful, rusting Volvo buses from a bygone period when the station was bustling with activity. In 2019, a former staff member told CNN Travel that construction began in 1973. It took 8 years to build the space-age looking station, and that it was the most beautiful bus park in Ukraine and Europe at the time. The former employee went on to say that the station serviced various international routes, including to and from Moldova, Czechoslovakia, Germany, and Poland. The building's roof was suspended by 180 steel cables, which were attached to a column in the center. During the Chernobyl nuclear power plant disaster in 1986, more than 70 buses were dispatched from the station to evacuate residents from the city of Pripyat. Some of the buses never returned because they absorbed too much radiation to continue operating safely, according to a former worker who spoke with CNN. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, all international bus routes from the station were canceled. Activity increased even more when Ukraine descended into a financial crisis that lasted for years to come. There was no money to replace aging buses, and in 2005, domestic routes were canceled. However, it wouldn't be until 2015 when the station officially closed its doors. Today, the effects of time and neglect are evident as the station falls further into disrepair and plants grow out of the roof and pavement. Number 5. Turbojet train. The Cold War was marked by an obsessive competition between the United States and the Soviet Union for technological and military supremacy. As part of their relentless need to one-up the other, both superpowers developed experimental jet-powered high-speed trains. American railroad engineer Don Wetzel designed the first of these vehicles during the mid-1960s. In addition to the desire to supersede any similar technology that might have been underway in the Soviet Union, the goal was to create a faster, safer, and less expensive train than anything in existence at the time. The M497 train, nicknamed the Black Beetle, was equipped with two 5,000-horsepower engines. It reached a record-breaking speed of 183 miles per hour and remains the fastest-ever locomotive in the U.S. to this day. The Soviets built their own jet-powered train during the 70s, and while it wasn't quite as fast as the Black Beetle, it was impressive in its own right. It had the ability to quickly reach speeds of up to 160 miles per hour, but it used a lot of fuel and never went past the prototype stage. Only 2 of the locomotives were ever built, and instead of being put to use, they were parked and forgotten about. Photos of a light blue locomotive surfaced in 2016 after a Russian photographer discovered it sitting in the exact spot where it was left decades ago. Today, it stands as a symbol of a time when the paranoia between two nations came terrifyingly close to nuclear war. Would you rather own a vintage bus or a vintage limousine? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Number 4. MAZ 7904. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union developed numerous heavy-duty trucks and tractors called MAZ vehicles. They were designed to carry military materials of all kinds, including the USSR's growing collection of nuclear missiles. One vehicle, known as the MAZ 7904, was equipped with 6 axles and 12 huge wheels, each measuring 9 feet in diameter. It was capable of carrying loads weighing up to 220 tons, but the chassis alone weighed 140 tons. The design it required was complicated, and over 100 experts were commissioned to ensure that it would work. They only performed tests at night and at times when there were no Western satellites looming in the sky above them. The more than 105-foot-long, 22-foot-wide machine was finally rolled out in June of 1983. However, the vehicle soon proved to be problematic and impractical. It was so heavy that it only had a maximum speed of just 16 miles per hour. It also handled poorly and was parked at a hangar in Kazakhstan, where it was forgotten about. In 2010, what was left of the MAZ 7904 was scrapped, and today it lives on only in photos. Number 3. Cape Schmidt Soviet Base. Located in Siberia's northernmost region, the former Soviet air base at Cape Schmidt is filled with neglected and snow-covered military buildings and vehicles. Formerly known as Cape North, it was established in 1954. The base was nearly entirely abandoned when the Cold War ended during the 90s and has functioned mainly as a municipal airport ever since. Russia began to re-establish its military presence at Cape Schmidt in recent years, but according to the latest updates, the site still looks dilapidated and messy more than anything else. Photos captured by photographer Andrei Shaprin in late 2015 show an array of decaying ships and airplanes that were still sitting outside the base at the time. Shaprin stayed at the base for 3 weeks as he was trying to follow migrating polar bears. He unfortunately missed the animals, but spent his time there snapping rare photos of the desolate base. The Russian government's plans for the base's future remain unclear, although it seems like the military has continued to expand its presence. Number 2. Smyrnik Air Base. Built during the early 20th century near the town of Smyrnik on Sakhalin Island in Russia's far east, the site that eventually became Smyrnik Air Base originally served the Imperial Japanese Army and was known as Keton. When the Soviet Union regained control over Sakhalin Island after World War II, Smyrnik Airfield became a base for the 528th Fighter Aviation Regiment. It was tasked with defending the island's air and marine territory. It also functioned as a watering and coaling station for the Sakhalin Railway. During the 1960s, an 8,200-foot runway was constructed at the base. The military also built a fan-shaped arrangement of reinforced concrete shelters for housing aircraft, along with gravel taxiways and 20 aircraft parking lots. Western intelligence first learned of the site in 1962, and within a decade of the discovery, the base was home to over a dozen Yak-28 interceptors. Smyrnik also came to house a MiG-23 Receptor regiment by the 1980s. Today, the airfield is no longer in use, and its runways haven't been maintained in decades. Its overgrown remnants remain, along with 3 decaying aircraft that are no longer airworthy. Number 1. Handley Page Victor. During the early stages of the Cold War, a strategic bomber called the Handley Page Victor was developed for the British Royal Air Force. It entered into service in 1958 and was initially praised for its ability to fly higher, further, and faster than previous models, while also carrying a heavier payload. Just 10 years later, RAF officials decided that the Handley Page Victor had failed to fulfill the military's readiness to respond to the Soviet Union's advancing nuclear missile technology. The aircraft simply wasn't designed to cope with low-level activity and had a tendency to form stress fractures in the environment where it was needed. It was repurposed as an aerial tanker and did very well at its new job until it was officially retired in October of 1993. One of the jets sat for years outside the RAF Marham base in Norfolk, England. In 2020, base officials offered it to anyone who was willing to come and remove it from the property. Their hope was that someone with the ability and desire to restore the plane would take them up on the opportunity. However, nobody did, leaving the military with no choice other than to dispose of the Victor, a move that a spokesperson described as a difficult decision. Which of these abandoned vehicles was the most interesting to you? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.